as a white person, would be happy to receive the same treatment that our black citizens do in this society, please stand. You didn't understand the directions. If you white folks want to be treated the way blacks are in this society, stand. Nobody's standing here. That says very plainly that you know what's happening. You know you don't want it for you. I want to know why you're so willing to accept it or to allow it to happen for others.
Arrested in Lawrence County. Within minutes, people start equating that to what happened in Minnesota. Shortly after Sebastian Erzadon is arrested, officers give the double murder suspect water and begin dressing his wounds. Within minutes, social media erupts with images like this one, showcasing the different police treatment for the suspect in Tennessee versus George Floyd, the suspect in Minnesota. Even celebrities like Snoop Dogg weighed in, writing, "Would you like a steak with your water after you killed 2 people?" Lawrenceburg Police Chief Terry Beecham, a lawman for 46 years, tells me he's appalled by what happened in Minnesota.
I can breathe. That man is in your custody. You have a moral and a legal obligation to protect him just like you would anybody else.
And he's shocked by the social media reaction to the arrest of their double murder suspect.
In April of 2017, I was arrested for possession of a controlled substance. Instead of searching my bag, I was asked to voluntarily hand over anything that I had. I handed over a small bag of weed that I had planned on selling later that night. I was not handcuffed as I was escorted to the back of the squad car. Once at the station, the cop joked around with me, and a couple hours later, my dad came and picked me up. The next day, the cop called me to inform me that my charges were being dropped because I seemed like a nice girl with a good head on her shoulders who had just fallen in with the wrong crowd. The translation is that I'm a small white girl from a good family. The truth is, though, that I had sold the drugs to the rest of the people I was with that night whose charges did not get dropped, and I had enough stuff in my backpack to probably keep me in prison for a good 10 years. Though I did not ask to benefit from the system, it is my responsibility to acknowledge the fact that I do, and it is my responsibility to use my privilege to become an effective ally for the Black community. Thank you.
I was 4 years old the first time I saw a Black person. I remember asking my dad, "Why is he brown?" And my dad's like, "He's Black." I was like, "No, he's brown." My dad grabs my arm and he's like, "He is Black and we do not talk to Black people." And he drags me away. And I just remember started crying because I didn't know what I said. I didn't know what this man did. I didn't know what was happening. I just knew my dad was really angry. Fast forward into my life, I noticed my interactions with Black people. I was really anxious and I get kind of sweaty and I was so uncomfortable. And I didn't know why, because it was uncalled for. I was like, what is happening? And so I asked myself, like, why are we feeling like this? And then I remembered what my dad said and I was like, holy shit, like, that is his racism I'm carrying. That's not mine. And my body has this reaction that Black people are scary and bad. Like, what the fuck? Like, this needs to end. So I started breaking down these paradigms. I need to be an ally. I need to educate myself. I need to stand up and be the change. So if you're that person, you need to own your past, forgive yourself for not knowing better, but know better moving forward, and stand up and be the difference.
Wow, what a beautiful day.
What? Oh no.
For real? Hey, place your hands outside the car where we can see them. Yep, just what I was afraid of.
I got this.
Sir, step out of the car. But when you do, don't be Black.
Wait, what?
If you could also avoid being Mexican or Muslim, that would be great too.
But I'm Black. Yeah, it's not gonna work for us.
Sir, please step out of the car as a white person so we can all relax.
I'm not sure how to do that.
He's resisting arrest.
We don't want any trouble!
Yeah, neither do I.
Then why are you being so Black about this?
I'm not being Black about this. I just am Black.
Is that
everyone. Welcome to 5BlackComics. We're so happy to have everyone watching the show. Pardon me?
I said our special guest.
Yeah, what? What I miss? Hi. Yeah, what I miss? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, you said I missed something. Did I miss something?
No, not yet.
I thought Preacher said I missed something.
No, I didn't. I said, hey, our special guest.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. This is how we do it. We go around, we say hi to everyone, then we introduce the guests, and there's a format here. Preach. I'm sure you know that.
Yeah.
So I want to welcome everyone to the show. Tanya, our new queen, how are you doing?
Hi, how you guys doing?
Great. Kevin Lee.
What's up?
How are you, my brother?
I'm good, brother. Glad to be with you.
All right. It's Desmond Walker. For Desi or Desmond? Desi Skywalker. How you doing, brother?
Desi is fine. Thank you. How's everybody doing? Good to see you tonight.
Hey.
All right.
Hey, Des. Hey, what's up?
That's it?
That's it.
Mr. Stephen E. Kimbrough, our brother out in L.A. How are you doing, my brother?
What you talking about, Willis?
And last but not least, our very, very special guest today, which we are very excited to have. And we want to thank Miss Tanya Cooper for bringing her to the show today. She is the Director of Training at CSWAC, which stands for the Center for the Study of White American Culture. Ladies and gentlemen, and all on the panel, let's hear it for Robin Alpern.
Yes. Hey, welcome, Robin.
Thank you. Thanks,
Robin. I'm going to have you explain exactly what it is your center does, but what little I read about it, it seems like there's a school where you teach white people how not to be too white, or I'm not quite sure what you do at your school, but apparently you're doing some really good things. From what I've heard, you as a white person, and a lot of my white friends have asked me, what can I do as a white person to help in a society that has lots of systemic racism? You decided to teach a class to show white people, hey, you might not want to do this, or maybe you should do this. But I'll let you go ahead and explain what it is exactly you and your school has been doing.
Okay, thank you. So technically, we're a nonprofit organization, and we offer a series of workshops, all on the theme of what people can do about racism, and in particular we do try to reach out to white people, because as we see it, white people have caused this issue. White people perpetuate racism and white supremacy, and so we have a lot of work to do and a lot of catching up to do, just learning to understand what's happened and how we are complicit with it, and what can we do to stop it.
Great. So I don't want you to feel bombarded today by all the questions. We know you don't have all the answers for white people. I think Tanya was a little afraid. We're going to ask you, how come white people do this? How come white people do that? And, and you're just one white person. You can only speak for you and I guess what you've experienced in your life. So I want to make sure we don't do that. So I'm going to start off by asking you, why do white people do this?
Why do they do it to us?
Right. And this is a serious question, because I always have questions, and these are things that I have experienced in my life. So I'm going to just ask, and you just give me your best answer. Everybody else is going to have their own way and their own reasons for asking questions that would satisfy them. But this is one of the encounters that I've had. First of all, I don't get the fear of Black people. And the panel has tried to explain it to me in the past that white people have been taught to fear Black people. But I always say, well, even if you're taught to fear someone and you meet them and you interact with them, because Black and white people, we work together day in and day out. We walk the streets together, we take the bus together, we take the train together, we plane together. So even if you're told that Black people are scary, how can you still grow up thinking that Black people are scary, even though you interact with them and you don't see what you're told? But here's one thing that I have to ask you, and this is something that happened to me. I was in a supermarket and my shopping cart was blocking the aisle. So this white lady comes down with her shopping cart. So instead of saying excuse me, she's kind of bumping my cart and looking at me, and she's smiling and has that little look of fear, which every Black person knows. There's always this look of fear on white people's face when they interact with us. So I always ask myself, why didn't she just say excuse me? You know what I mean? Why is she so fearful? What does she think I'm gonna do to her? She just said excuse me. Now it's starting to piss me off that she's just bumping my cart to get by. So I'm thinking either one or two things. One, she's afraid that, you know, this Black man is just going to go off and you know, harm her in some way. Or she thinks I don't need to say excuse me to him. He's Black, I'm white. He should just get out of my way. So not to put you on the spot, but what do you think is going through her head?
I think you're absolutely right in identifying those two things that are simultaneously happening. One is the fear and one is the privilege. And, you know, it's not a small thing to grow up as your whole life as a white person being told and being shown all around you in society all the time that Black people are dangerous. Right, who we see on the news who committed crimes is always Black people. Who we see in the headlines is, you know, so that has a way of deeply impacting your consciousness. And that one clip you had of the white woman who talked about, you know, it's my dad's racism I'm carrying. Like, that's a fact. Despite all of the work that I have done, I still, if I get on the elevator and a Black man gets on the elevator, I cannot not have that at least a moment of, oh God, a Black man's on the elevator with me. Now that's, you know, so that's out of my control, that unconscious fear. Now what I do about it, that's a different thing. And that's where, you know, teaching myself has made a difference. But I'm just going to say, so that fear is a real and deep thing that's present. And then at the same time, it's also been drilled into, I'm going to say me as a white person, my whole life, that, you know, I have privilege. I am the superior one here in this interaction. So you damn well better get out of my way. I mean, that also, to me, this is a really good reason why white people should want to do anti-racism work, because it's like our consciousness has been hijacked. You know, those are not ways that I want to be thinking or feeling. And I should be, I'm outraged that those kind of thoughts and feelings pass through me against my will.
I'm going to go to Preach next, so get ready. But before I go to him, we have seen, but the thing, my response to when I hear stuff like that is, we have seen videos, pictures, there's documentation of Black people being lynched and horrible atrocities being done to Black people. Yeah. But we're still not afraid of what we walk with white people day in and day out. And we don't have that fear, and the things that white society have done to us, it pales in comparison to what we've done to them, which is pretty much nothing. So, but we don't have that fear, you know. So I don't understand how I have documentation that you have committed these atrocities against me. I have videos. You have nothing to show that I have abused you in any way, but yet still, I mean, it's some kind of Jedi mind trick seems to be played on us that, you know, the abuser is now afraid of the abuse. I'm like, you know.
Carl, I have to say that is the first time that somebody has pointed that out to me, and I'm going to have to think about that, because that's a really interesting point that I don't have an answer for at the moment. All I can tell you is about my experience as a white person, which is that fear has been drilled in. Yeah. So deep that, like I say, even though I know better, even though I know that I'm much more at risk of being harmed by a white man, you know, still that impulse is there. So I don't know. That's a really interesting question. I want to think about that.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Preach, you have a question for Robin?
Well, I like to first welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
You know, I like to say that my family kind of started the white flight in our neighborhood, because when my parents bought their house, on the left side of us was the owner of the local liquor store, you know, Tony's Shamrock. He's Irish, obviously. Across the street was McGilvery's. Up the street was the O'Briens, the Ryans. We were smack dab in the middle of an all-white neighborhood. And then by the time I graduated high school, it was, you know, mostly Black. Yeah, all Black. All the white people had moved out. So,
Is that your, do you have a question for?
Do I have a question? Why? Why do they do this? Why? I mean, do they think? I mean, is it that big of a deal where they say, well, we can't live in a community where there are Black people?
You know, here's where I wish I was a better historian, because I know that I have seen movies about, Levittown, I think, New Jersey. I mean, I know that there's been very intentional ways that white people have been pushed to leave neighborhoods under these conditions. They've been lied to and misinformed by other white people, you know, letting them know that, your property value is about to go down and your school's going to go to hell, and, you know, this, that, and the other thing. And a lot of white people, they don't do the homework, they believe the hype, and, you know, so they feel like, well, I have to take care of my family. I have to make sure my kids are going to have a good school to go to, you know. So the powers that be, the white supremacist powers that be, have their ways of persuading and convincing white folks that, oh, you better move on. This is not going to be a good place for you. And they make it very believable.
Okay, Tanya.
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's true. Fear is the number one way that all this is perpetuated. But your classes, Robin, what does, give me an idea of what one of your classes look like. I forgot the name of the one I'm talking specifically of. Just one of your classes. What is?
Well, I have there's Raising Anti-White Children.
Right, that one. That's the one. Yes. What would that look like? I have taken your class before. It was awesome. Because I was thinking, oh, I'm Black, I don't need to take that. But I was like, wow, I didn't realize. I say, oh, I don't see color. I say it oftentimes. And you guys taught me something about that. So what is your typical class?
So in Raising Anti-Racist White Children, we, first of all, we ask, and these workshops, by the way, are open to people of all races, but it is true that primarily it's white folks who come to that workshop. So we ask everybody to spend some time reflecting upon what we learned about race and racism as children ourselves. You know, before we even look at your kids, let's look at ourselves as children. And, you know, we see patterns that, for instance, white people don't identify as having a particular race, or aren't identified by outsiders as having a particular race until we're much older. You know, we might be 10 years old before we realize that we're white people. Some people are not even until they're in college that they find out that they have a racial identity and it's white. Whereas people of color, you know, typically get informed one way or another much earlier. So it's just interesting to see, you know, the differences in how we are racialized and socialized according to our race. Let's see, other things we look at in that workshop, we look at microaggressions and how to respond to them, because if you're white, you are going to definitely commit microaggressions, you know, whether you like it or not, whether you're educated and informed somewhat about racism like I am, I'm still going to make mistakes. So we try to, you know, help people coach their kids, you know, when you make that kind of mistake, here's some ways you can address it. We also teach about media literacy. You know, how to coach your children or your students, if you're a teacher, how to coach them to look at media, because we know that kids are surrounded, right, with social media of all types. So how to look at that critically and see the racism that's embedded so often. We show them some ads, for instance, and have them break it down. It's horrifying, you know, the racism that's right there in these ads. But if you don't know what you're looking at and don't understand how it's being manufactured and put out there, then, you know, you may not be able to help your child critique it. So those are some of the things we do in the workshop.
Thank you.
Kevin?
Yeah, hi, how you doing, Robin? Welcome to the show. And
I'm good, thanks, Kevin.
How can you possibly be afraid of a face like this? Question for you. Are white people, I mean, more afraid of a darker skinned Black guy than a light skinned dark guy? Like if I get on an elevator with you, are you more intimidated then if Preach got on the elevator with you, him being a darker guy with the dreads and everything, are you intimidated? I mean, are white people, to your knowledge, more intimidated by darker skinned black people than lighter skinned white people?
Yeah, there's no question, and there's a term for that. I'm sure you know, colorism, which you know is closely related to racism, but which has to do with that the darker the shade of skin color, kind of the worse the racism is, and right, you know, I mean that's how it.
The darker the bird, the sweeter the juice.
Right, because the other way to look at it is the lighter you are, the closer you are to a white person. So the less I have to fear you, because the more like me you are, the lighter your skin is.
All right.
That's how the thinking goes. I'm not saying that's
No, I appreciate you. That's a good answer. Thank you.
I got many questions. I'll limit it to 2, and hopefully we have some back and forth. Robin, again, welcome. I didn't say welcome to you specifically, so 2 questions really. When white people say, "I don't see color," I know that they mean well and their intention is good. I have a lot of comedic replies to that comment, but I'm not sure. I'll give you a little. I grew up the only black kid in school. I got magic Negro status because I didn't act like what they thought black people should act like. So I got the inside track a lot, even though a lot of times I knew that there were things that they were talking about that they didn't include me in. But so question number 1, when people say, "I don't see color," tired of educating or helping people. Sometimes I'll ask questions to get them to check their own self. But is there a productive response when you hear that?
There's a lot. So first of all, I just got to say, we do at CSWAC, we have a whole workshop called Why Color Matters. I think that's the one that Tanya took with us, to help break it down why this ideology of color blindness is a really bad idea. And by the way, did not come out of good intentions. You might think that it was a great idea. And I think that a lot of white people honestly do think, yeah, this is the proper way to be. I'm not supposed to see color. I was taught as a kid I shouldn't talk about race. And, you know, this is the way, is to just pretend that we're all equal and it's all good. But actually, it's important to educate people that color blindness is a really bad idea, a very bad strategy for racial justice. If I don't see your color, I don't see you, right? I am ruling out a whole lot of your experience, your life, what I need to know about you to be able to be in relationship with you. It's also, I can't help saying this, but it's also a straight up lie. You know, the brain processes stuff like skin color in milliseconds. Right. Right. So, you know, why, and then you have to ask, well, why would we be lying about this? Like, I don't say, oh, I don't see your age, or I don't see your gender, or, you know, so why is there this thing about race that I don't see that? It's because being colorblind allows white people to remain in the top dog position. It allows me to pretend that all of that racial stuff is not real. And, you know, I'm just an ordinary human being who happens to be the superior being. I want to say one more thing on this, because it is the weekend that we are honoring and celebrating and carrying forward the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So I just want to mention that one thing that really irks me is people, usually white people, who will lift up Dr. King and say, well, he said, don't judge. Well, you know what? The fact is that the man said, don't judge people by the color of their skin, right? He never said, don't see it. He never said that. He said, don't judge. But he actually said very clearly in one of his books that being blind was probably more dangerous than many other forms of racism. To be blind to race was one of the most dangerous ways to be.
Okay, so just
don't roll Dr. King out for me to tell me that, oh, I don't see color.
Yeah. Just to follow up on that, do you see the deflections of many conversations or the whataboutism that a lot of white people employ? Is that a same technique to not dirty their hands and admit that they have bias? Sometimes I call them on it. Sometimes I just tell them they're deflecting. But it gets really frustrating to try to move us as a society to a higher level when people will argue the whataboutisms and all that stuff. So I'm trying to ask you, how do you handle that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it goes to one of the pieces that is at the heart of this, which is that white people have been trained to think about racism as a personal, individual act of nastiness,
like an indictment.
Yeah, and so what we need to know is that no, it's a system. It's systemic oppression and devastation of people of color by white people. So the fact that it's a system and the fact that it's a one-way system, it doesn't go the other way. There's no such thing as reverse racism. So that's really important to understand and to get that. Because when people come at you with that, well, what about, and so on. Well, sure, of course there are individual instances where, like I remember a few summers ago hearing about a Black man who, I think he shot several white cops and said, you know, oh, sorry, there's sirens going by. How about that? And he said, I shot them because they were white. So white people will want to say, you see, racism goes both ways. But actually, no, it doesn't. The fact that one individual Black person does something against white people, that does not reverse the system that is locking up Black and brown people disproportionately in prison, and that is causing Black and brown people to not have housing, not have access to education, not have access to healthcare, on and on and on. All of that does not get changed by your example that you want to trot out about what about.
Right.
Well, isn't that the argument that we've been having with the recent events that happened on the National Mall?
Yes.
With the white supremacists, and as I go through social media, mainly Facebook, I see everybody's bringing up, well, look what happened over the summer with Black Lives Matter, so that's white people's answer to those who are Trump supporters who are now saying that's the answer. Well, look what Antifa did over the summer, so yeah, that's kind of BS.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Stephen E. Kimbrough out in LA, my brother.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. All right. My question is, I was talking with a white person about a term that I coined, racial industrial complex, which means white and Black people are making money on racism as a whole. And he made a confession to me that a lot of these white people are super angry because they think that the modern day democracy is dismantling the economics that revolves around racism. Do you think there's any truth to that? And have you heard any other white people confess to that? And what's your thought on it?
Okay, you're a little bit getting into some territory where I'm less familiar, but I do know that white people have begun putting up a lot of complaint and fuss about, oh, poor us, you're doing bad things to white people, and white people have become the underclass, and a whole lot of nonsense along those lines. And so again, it's important to know that, well, no, actually the system is still very much in place. There is truth to the fact that white people, especially if, let's say, they are economically depressed, or maybe not educated, or have other factors like that going on, that they may in fact be, not experiencing the privileges that some of us who are educated and well off and so on are experiencing. And so, yes, they may have some legitimate gripes about, I'm having issues here, but that does not change their white skin privilege. And I'm sorry, I may be veering off from your question. So if I don't answer it at all, please put it out there again. But one other thing I want to mention is that I just recently saw an article about how racism is costing all of us financially. And I try to keep track of, information, actual research and statistics and stuff that come across my desk along those lines. Because again, here's where white people have been drilled from infancy to believe that this privilege is serving us, that, we're better off because we've got this white privilege. And the fact is that racism and white supremacy are damaging the whole society, white people included. And the more that we can educate white folks about the truth of that, and to realize that actually our economic system would be way better off if we would stop slamming people of color and allow us to all, live and work together, the more we can teach that and get that across, the more it could help us change.
Agree.
So again, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if that addressed your question. Okay. Great.
All right, I'm going to read this comment here jumped out at me. It was asked by Carrie D'Agostino. Shut up. I hope I said your name correctly. And this is what she asked. This is what she said. Racism isn't one-sided if we can all let go of history and push forward and just learn to love one another. I don't know what she means by that. And she's Black.
I know.
So I don't know what she means. Let go of history, because I don't see anything wrong with holding on to history and just making the future better, but to ask Black people to just let go of history, yes. I'm not quite sure. Carrie, if you want to comment further on that.
Yeah. Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
That's like asking, in my opinion, that's like asking a victim to forget about being abused at 4 years old, so they can move forward. No, I'm not going to forget about that. No. And you can't forget about something because they keep popping up every 5 minutes. I'm sure African Americans would love to say, this race thing is exhausting. I'm tired of talking about it. Okay, let's put it on the back burners. Let's get rid of it. We'd love to. I mean, I know all of you would love to get rid of it. But every time you walk out your door, guess what? It pops right up in your face. When you turn in your news, it pops right up in your face. That's why we can't just get rid of it. It's not like, and it's not even on our side, actually, at this point. We have to have people go to people like Robin's classes and learn their behavior so that they can work with us, the people who are being offended, and learn to, coincide with us. We already know how to coincide. I mean, this is what we've been doing since we got here. Slavery, some of us been here. We've been doing this. It's other people that have to learn how to be our allies and how to, even if you don't love us, at least let us live. That's the thing.
Hey, Rob. Yeah. I'm sorry.
How can people say, Robin, all lives matter? I mean, we have seen, like I said, there's video, there's documentation, of Black people being lynched. There's pictures of Black people hanging from trees and white people partying at the bottom of the tree, laughing and having a good time. And we all see in today's, what's going on today with Black people being shot and white people not being shot for worse crimes. But yet still white people say, well, all like, do they not really get it? Or are they just playing dumb?
Carl, if it's okay, I want to first make one comment on what we were talking about a moment ago,
Sure.
and come back to All Lives Matter. So I support everything that Tanya said about that letting go of history thing. It's the fact is that the history is still right now, right? It's not like racism ended. If it ended, then we could talk about, okay, we're going to let go, but it didn't end. It's still right now. And you can connect the dots directly when you pay attention and learn your history. You find out things like that the police that we have now, that's a direct outgrowth of the slave patrols that were set up in the 1700s with the white people, policing. And so when you know that, it helps you to understand a little bit better, well, why is stuff as fucked up as it is now with the cops? There is no such thing as the history putting it behind us, because we are living it right now.
Right.
And then to come to All Lives Matter, I also appreciated that you had Jane Elliott open up for us tonight. She said one of my favorite things. She says, we wouldn't have Black Lives Matter if you hadn't had and here she has a number that I don't agree with, but you wouldn't need Black Lives Matter if we hadn't had 300 years of Black Lives Don't Matter. That's that's the fact.
I love that line. Can I ask you a question?
Isn't that great?
How come you don't agree with the number?
Well, I think that it's been longer than 300 years. That's all.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So I'm not sure where she came up with that number, but
yeah,
maybe she can't do math, but she does some fine anti-racism. So you know, white people who say all lives matter. First of all, I think that they're feeling threatened. You know, so that goes right back to that fear and privilege thing. And they're also going to that colorblindness thing that says the way to get out of this mess is to keep insisting that everybody's equal. And so all lives matter is just another way of saying, oh, we're all equal here. But that's a lie. We're not equal. We are not being treated equal. You know, as human beings, yes, at our core, we are certainly equal. I got to say, as a Quaker, and Tanya's a Quaker, and that's how we know each other, you know, I know human beings are equal, but we are not being treated equally. That's a straight up lie.
One of the things I want to ask is, do white people talk to each other when they do racist things? Because a lot of my white friends, when I tell them about the things I've been through, they are shocked. I mean, they're like totally shocked that this is happening, like totally oblivious to the things I'm telling them. And I'll give you another story. I once worked for a company, and there were these positions that opened up that were paying a lot more than what I was making. So myself and another white guy, we decided to go for it. So he went in, inquired about the job. HR told him, okay, if you want this job, you need to take these classes. If you get, if you average a C, we'll pay for the class. If you don't, then you have to pay for it yourself. And after you pass that, you take this step. They walked him through the steps. And after you complete all of that, you absolutely can get the job because you are an employee and you'll be one of the first we consider. Okay, so he said, this is what they told me. Like, all right. So he said, you go in and we can, because there were like 4 or 5 jobs. So it wasn't like we were competing against each other. So I went in and I said, yeah, I'm here. I'm inquiring about the job that's posted on the board. And she looked at me and she said, well, I'm sorry, but you're not qualified.
Wow.
And I go, okay, I'm waiting for her to give me some more information because I know what she told him. She said, you're not qualified. I said, I know, but I'm like, yeah, okay. And she said, I'm sorry, but I'm smart. So you're just not qualified. And that was it. Now, when she goes home, when she talks to her friend or her dad or her mom, does she say, you know, this black guy came in and he wanted a more prestigious job and I just didn't give it to him, and and they have a good laugh? Or do people like that just keep it to themselves? Because I just don't understand how all my white friends have no idea the microaggressions and all the little tiny racist bullshit that we have to put up with. Do they talk to each other and admit it, or is it like a white secret?
White secret.
That sounds like a product. I'm going to buy some of that.
You know, I don't know, because I don't understand how could you not know that this stuff is happening to black people? How could you not know? So I assume they don't talk to each other, or they don't admit it.
Well, I mean, I'm going to say it's both. Obviously, there are lots of white people who are living in their bubble, and they like it there, and they stay there. They're perfectly comfortable. They are not trying to come out of that white bubble, and so when they talk to each other, they're just constantly reinforcing that white bubble. And if somebody comes and if a white person comes to them and says, well, what about, then they'll have an answer for that and stay in their bubble. But, fortunately, more and more, at least it's my impression, my observation, that it does appear that for terrible reasons, meaning things such as Mr. George Floyd and all those other highly publicized events, more and more white people are saying, wait a minute, something's off here, something's going on. This can't be just random. We're having more people coming to our workshops. I'm hearing more and more about white people who are out there protesting, taking action. So white people are also talking to each other behind the scenes and saying, this isn't right, and I got to do something.
Yes.
And what I think is that with the cell phone camera and with our current administration, It's out on Front Street. It's a conversation that we are forced to have. Where do you see, like, if you could project 10, 15 years in the future, do you think that we will eventually achieve equality, or do you think that people will continue to bury their heads in the sand and deflect away from the issue?
Oh, I sure wish that I had a crystal ball and could know the answer to that. I don't know. It does, again, appear to me like more white people are getting it. More white people are getting on board and getting in action. And ultimately, I believe that's one of the main things that needs to happen, because it is white people, as I said at the very beginning, who invented this system of oppression and who perpetuate it. So, you know, to the extent that we can get white people to turn it around, I think that there's possibility. You know, I would do this work that I do as an anti-racist, regardless of what I believed about the future, because I just think, you know, I don't know how to live and not be working against this oppression. But I do think that there's a possibility. I think that human beings are malleable. And I believe what I said earlier, that society would be much better off if we got rid of racism. So that's a fact. And as long as that's a fact, it seems like it could work out.
I have two questions for you, Robin.
I got a quick question real quick. Do you think more laws and policies should be implemented that have to deal with racism? In other words, making racist behavior illegal in this country via legislation, laws, and policies?
I do think that is part of what needs to happen. Yes. I know there's lots of arguments about this in the circles that I travel in anyway, about basically, do you need to change hearts or do you need to change policies? And frankly, I think you need to do both. Because some people are not going to change their hearts. And so you need laws and policies and practices to keep them in line. And some people aren't going to obey the laws. That's one reason why this has been going on so many hundreds of years, is people keep finding ways to twist it and turn it and change it and bring up a new way. So changing hearts is a way to combat that. Have people get it that, oh, we don't want these racist laws and practices in place. So I think you got to do both.
Kevin,
now, would we be better off,
I forgot
like, trying to vote out those who are like extremely racist?
I missed a word in there, Preach. Would we be better off what?
Well, because there are so many that are in positions of power. I mean, so isn't like to start voting out those that are standing in the way, especially like, okay, if you look at Capitol Hill, storming of Capitol Hill, and there were people inside that were feeding information to the protesters or the rioters as they were coming in. So is it like, okay, these people need to be put out of office. They need to get voted out. They need to be censured. Something has to happen to them.
Yeah, totally. The work that we do at CSWAC, when we do institutional trainings, where the change needs to happen is at the top level, because you can do everything to train the foot soldiers, if you will. But if the administration is still up there running things from a white supremacist perspective, you're not going to get anywhere.
Well, Rob, you mentioned religion too. I find it interesting that we see a lot of the people who call themselves evangelical seem to be also racist. Is there anything? Do you have any program that addresses racism as it relates to religion?
Not at CSWAC, not per se, but that's not the only community that I travel in or work in. So as a Quaker, we definitely, there are many of us in my Quaker community who are working to bring an anti-racist agenda and, trying to tie that clearly to our faith. What does that have to do with our faith? So yeah.
So before I put my foot in my mouth and ask about Quaker in relation to cereal, what is a Quaker? What do you have to do as a Quaker, and what do you have to do to me as a Quaker?
Shoot, Nancy, we have a Quaker right on our show, and you just wait.
Two Quakers.
That's what I'm saying. We had Tanya here the whole time. Go ahead.
He's racist. He want to ask the white.
Yeah, he didn't want to ask the black Quaker. He want to ask the white Quaker. Go ahead.
Plus, now you're now we're going to go into like the second and third hour of this show, because I'm a lifelong Quaker, and it's very, very important to me, and I could go on a really long time about that.
Quaker means peaceful and love. That's what I get from Quakers. They're peaceful, loving people. That's it.
That's part of it. That's certainly part of it. However, since I'm on this show and our topic is race, racism, and anti-racism, I will say that one of the things that's known about Quakers, when people have heard of us, is that we ran the Underground Railroad. So I am here to say that is a lie. That's a myth. Quakers did not run the Underground Railroad. People of African descent ran the Underground Railroad, and there were a lot of Quakers, including white Quakers, who assisted, and some gave their lives. So I don't want to belittle that, but we Quakers, we modern Quakers, tend to rest very much on those laurels, and that makes my job as an anti-racist Quaker a lot harder, because I'm here to bring the bad news to Quakers. We did a lot of messed up stuff. We kicked people out of the church because they were abolitionist, and a lot of other messed up stuff. And we tend to be the white liberals who have a very bad record fighting against racism. So we got a lot of work to do.
One of the things I find is, I think being not talking about racism is the worst thing. I wasn't born in America. I'm from the Caribbean. So this is just my personal opinion, that not talking about it seems to me to be the worst thing to help the whole racist. Not just, why are white people so afraid? Even if I have close white friends that I thought were close, but when I start talking about race, they back up and they just don't want to talk about it.
Yes.
Just allow me to speak. If you're my friend and you have an issue, like I have female friends and they talk to me about sexual harassment, how this guy did this, and and I listen and I empathize, and because they're my friend. But if you're my friend and you're white and I'm telling you this is what's happening and you just don't want to deal with it, I don't get that. Like, I just don't get that. Why? And if I'm angry, I have every right to be angry. You know what I mean? Just let me be angry. Just let me get it out. I have a right to be angry or frustrated or pissed off or whatever. Because if you look at the history, I tell these guys all the time who were born in this country, you guys are not nearly as pissed off as you should be. I'm serious.
You should spend some time with me.
I agree. I actually want to go right back to that comment that we had a little earlier about, forget about the history and leave that behind and just, love. And I want to tie that together with what we were just talking about Quakers. The founders of the Center for Study of White American Culture are an interracial Quaker couple. Right, so that's how I got involved, because I knew these Quakers, and Jeff Hitchcock, the white man who is one of our two founders, he has been building an analysis that he calls loosely Love and Justice, and he talks about how white people tend to focus on that we want to be in relationship with people of color, and my own take on that is that, because we are human, I know it may not always appear that way, but we are human. We do have a deep awareness of how we have been torn apart from people of color, that we have been separated and divorced from people of color. So we do have that urge to have a relationship. And Jeff labels that urge to be in relationship, he calls that love. And so we're always kind of seeking that. And for us, that's a good enough thing. Oh, I've got a black friend. Okay, I'm happy now. I'm all set. However, for people of color, because people of color are the ones being damaged and locked up and, you know, harmed in every which way. For people of color, just being in a relationship isn't enough. Justice is what's being looked for here. So you get white people who just want to, you know, make nice and, you know, let's have a good time. Let's be friends. That makes me feel good because now I got some color in my life, if you will. But that's not going to be enough, right? Over the long haul, it may be enough for a little while, but it's not going to be enough for a relationship to last for the person of color in the equation.
Hey, I wanted to ask Robin, what's the big age group of your classes? Because I'm starting to see a trend. Like when I was young or a kid, whatever, most racist people were old people, but now I'm starting to see more racist young people than older people, and that's disturbing. How the hell that happened? Like how are you racist at 13? You know, I mean, it's just. So do you have like a lot of young people that come to your school? Or
well, our workshops are offered for adults. So, you know, occasionally we might have a you know, late teen might come in there, but for the most part, it's adults of all ages. But you are absolutely correct that, and again, it has to do with that way that we are steeped in racism from the time we come into the world. And that's one of the things we talk about in that Raising Anti-Racist White Children workshop is that, you know, people like to think that children, well, white people like to think this anyway, that children are innocent, they don't know about race, don't talk to them about race because you will infect them with that. If you just leave them be, they will be, you know, they'll grow up being all, you know, all lives matter people. But that's not true. They're growing up in a society surrounded by racism all the time. And guess what? They absorb that. They suck that up because they see that this is part of my survival is to learn this stuff. But by the way, never talk about it, right? It's taboo. Grown-ups don't like it when you say things like, oh, why does that lady have brown skin? Or I'm sorry, whatever it was that you mentioned earlier. You know, grown-ups don't like that. They say hush, hush. And so you got this very twisted thing going on with kids. And I've seen a number of articles talking about how millennials are just as racist as their parents. You know, there's research and stuff to show that even though younger people, they kind of know how to talk a good line. You know, they've been taught how to not say certain things and, you know, behave certain ways, but they, you know, they've been steeped in it.
Yeah, because Dylan Roof was like, what, 17 at the time that he murdered the people in the church in South Carolina, the racist murder.
Yeah, yes.
He's like 17. Like,
yeah.
You get that much anger in your heart at the age of 17. And
yeah.
Crazy.
That's really crazy.
Yeah, he's the one I thought of when you were talking earlier about the different ways that people are treated. Because, you know, look how Dylan Roof, like, he's still alive, right? He didn't get shot dead by the cops. No.
I don't either.
He probably got offered, you know, soda and a steak or whatever.
He did went to jail,
yeah, he did get one. That's true. I wanted to say, well, Robin, you know why I became a Quaker? Because, well, when I was at NYU, I just studied all these different religions, just took classes just to see what was what. And so I don't know. I mean, my ex-father-in-law was a Quaker, so that's really how I got introduced to it. But I was under the impression too that that they helped. Well, I know they did help slaves. It may not be as high number as now alleged, whatever. But to me, for all the religions I studied, there's people right out saying, yes, I'm a Christian and I love the Lord and I'm a Lutheran, I'm a this, I'm a that. And you literally watching people hang from trees and not doing anything about it. So only reason why I chose Quakers over all the other religions, and I could be deadly wrong, and I'm seeing now as you say stuff, was because they were the only ones, a woman or whoever was the only ones that eventually said, if you own a slave, you can't be a Quaker. At some point, he did say that in 1800s. I forgot what year it was. But that's the only reason why I joined them, because even if the rest of the Quakers were bad, at least there was one leader, or not leader because we don't have leaders, but, you know, one person of authority or whatever you want to call it, saying that you can't call God's name and then say, here, you're going to work for me for free. It just doesn't go together. So, I mean, I hope I wasn't that wrong.
Well, I didn't say that there was anybody doing better than Quakers.
Right, because I couldn't find any. I was looking.
Yeah, I mean, I do know a little bit about what some other faith communities are doing. I'm a little bit jealous that I think it's the Mennonites, I think, who have identified, like if you go to their church, there's a banner that says, "We are an anti-racist church." I think it's, and you know, like I feel like the Quakers should be declaring that. So, you know, so some people are doing, but I'm not really aware of faith communities that are really coming out. Unitarians, I'll say Unitarians been doing a lot of good work.
Well,
But
yeah.
Sorry,
I meant for historical time during slavery. You know, helping the slaves escape. At least the stories that I was told that they hid people. You know, took big chances because you could be killed too. So
that definitely did happen, and as I said, there definitely were Quakers who gave their lives, and you know, they were in the struggle, and they were not kidding. But there was also a lot of pushback, and I'm saying most importantly, right now in our current times, what I see is not enough Quakers who get it and who care enough to step up.
I agree.
All right, let me read a couple of comments here because we love to interact with our fans.
Okay, great.
First of all, Carrie, the Augustino, shut up. She's not black. She actually, I think Desi, I don't know if you remember that. Remember Dave Riley and you and I did it. Did you do a show? Remember the lady was had terminal cancer in the hospital, and we did it. Were you on that show?
Yeah.
This lady that commented a few years ago, probably more than a few years ago, her sister-in-law was dying, and her dying wish was to have. She'd never been to a live comedy show, so we put together a comedy show. Went into one of the hospital rooms, and brought her out on a gurney, and we did a show for her, and it was great, and it was very sad and touching, and I actually kept a photo of her sister, which I still have on my phone. And so that's her, Carrie, that's commented, made the comment. So I just wanted to say that you know, that was very touching, that show. But Gina Fiore, who is our super fan, has a question for you, Robin. Gina's question is, why are white people so adamant about the black stigmatism? For example, black people are lazy, or it's been 150 years, they need to get over it. Or black people have been given opportunities over whites for jobs. When black people have been given opportunities over whites for jobs when we had to hire so many people of color and a woman. I'm sick of white people saying this to me. Any thoughts?
Well, I don't know if I'm going to say anything too new here or just harp on some things we already talked about. It does partly come down to education. So again, our society is invested in white supremacy. Our society runs on white supremacy. So everything is organized around teaching white people all the time that we are better in every way. And so, you know, that has an impact. White people who don't take the time and energy to break out of that white bubble and actually learn the facts of what's going on can easily point to all kinds of information that backs their statements that they're making because they don't know the facts.
Like example, like black people selling a house, if they want a high appraisal value, they have to take down all the pictures of their black family. And some black people even, not hire, but ask white friends, can you stand in for me while I'm selling my house so I can get a, I mean, that right there tells you that, you know what I mean? You don't matter.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Moving into a neighborhood can make the house values drop. The fact that I'm black lowers the property value. What does that tell me as a person?
Yeah. You're making me think of a website I want to mention, the Anti-Racist Alliance. They're a local to me organization that grew out of the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond, which is the premier national anti-racism training organization. So the Anti-Racist Alliance, they have a website where one of their tabs is consequences. And if you look at their consequences tab, they've gathered a whole lot of articles that give the statistics and research on how people of color are being harmed in every area of life by racism. And, you know, the person that you were talking about a moment ago, they're maybe not going to be willing to go look at that tab. But some white people, you know, when you challenge them, they might be willing to go and inform themselves a little bit and start to have their eyes opened. Like, I remember that's kind of how it happened for me. You know, a couple of conversations that cracked open that veneer of, oh, I know what's going on here, to where I started to say, wait a minute, I think maybe I don't know what's going on here, and I might need to find out more. And then once you crack that, you know, it can change your whole life. And now, next thing you know, you're running workshops trying to teach people about racism.
Have you ever had anyone in your workshop where you go, I can't help this person?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
They're just stuck in their ways. Black people are scary. I don't care what you say. Look at the news. You know, look at the prison system. Look at see who's in prison. It's the black people in prison, so they must be doing something wrong. You know what I mean?
To be honest, mostly I don't encounter those people in our workshops. Usually the people who come to our workshops, they do have a certain amount of open mind. They might not be as far along as I wish they would be, but they, you know. But yeah, plenty in my everyday life, I encounter those people. I'm like, you know, I either need to talk to you for 12 hours or I need to, you know, move on and work with somebody I can work with.
Gina wants that website again. If you what's the website? I'll put it in the banner.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, it's the Anti-Racist Alliance.
Okay, Anti-Racist
I typed it in there, but you can type it again.
Okay, great. And I hope you're going to put our website in too for CSWAC.
Oh yeah.
Well, we were kind of skeptical because we didn't want the proud boys showing up at
your door. Right.
We didn't know if that was okay.
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
What's it called, Robin?
Yeah.
I'm putting it in there now. What's it called?
The URL is euroamerican.org. There you go.
Got it.
Yeah, and we've been saying from the beginning of the center, which was over 25 years ago, I wasn't there then, but we've been saying that our name is part of doing the work, because we live in a society that divides people up into racist or not racist. And people who name whiteness, well, those are the racists. You know, because if you're a good person, a non-racist person, you don't talk about color, you don't talk about race, right? Like we've been saying. So for us to actually name white in our name, we do get a lot of people who think, oh yeah, you must be white nationalists or something. So we're educating people that no, actually, if you're anti-racist, you name whiteness. That's one of the first things you do, is you talk about white people and white culture and what that's about and what's got to change.
I think white people want to feel racist. Like they think it's a feeling. They think it's a feeling. Like, I don't feel racist, so I'm not racist. And I say it because I remember when Barack Obama became president, I had a white friend who we were friends. We were comedy friends for like 10 plus years. We've been all over the country together doing shows. And when Barack Obama won, he called me up, and the first thing he said was, well, you guys got what you wanted. You got a black president. You can't complain anymore.
Wow.
I go, what do you mean, you guys? I mean, because I'm thinking like, what do you mean now that you people, you know what I mean? So I guess in his day, you don't see it as racist.
It's like all the stereotypes too, that like a lot of comedians did jokes about, before Obama was president, a lot of comedians would do jokes about, if we got the first black president, he's going to hire his own family. He's going to have all of it.
Yeah.
And actually,
Trump isn't black.
Trump has done all of that stuff. Comedians made jokes about for years about having the first black president in the White House. What he would do. Trump's done all of that stuff, as far as having the 2 or 3 wives, the different kids, and all the stereotypes. Hiring your family to come in and run shit. You know, Trump's done all of the stereotype stuff that a supposed black president would do if he made it to the White House. Which, of course, we know Obama was nothing but class. He did none of that stuff. So.
Tanya, you got a question?
Yeah, I want to say, so because I had some white friends ask me this, how is there anything that we can do as African Americans to help those who want to be allies, how do you say it, so that we don't not throw them off, but make them just not want to do it, but so that they'll be more, sometimes people are thinking about something like, I know that's wrong, I want to do something, but I don't know what to do and I can't do it. It's too scary. So what can we do? Is there anything we can do that will make it be a more approachable, this racism thing, and to actually confront your own Karen, if you have, not you, but whoever has a Karen in them? You know what I'm saying? Is there something we can do?
Well, I would say there's plenty you can do. I have to immediately qualify that and say that what I know as a white anti-racist advocate and anti-racist activist is that you don't burden the people of color with educating, and right. Okay, so that's a given. However, if you wish to, then absolutely there are so many books out now, for starters, books like White Fragility. Our organization has published a number of books that you can see at our website. There are books that really speak to white people, coming, some of them are from white people, some are from people of color, that are approaching them in a compassionate way, not shame and blame, but just, like, look, here's the deal. And so you can refer folks to books. For sure, you can send them to our workshops. We try to walk a real careful line between being too careful and compassionate and frightening people off. And generally, what we hear is that white people experience our workshops as a safe space to challenge themselves and do good work. And I mean, there's just gazillions of resources. There's podcasts people can listen to. There's just so much out there. So what you can do is say, I care about you. I'd like us to be able to continue to be in a good relationship. And for that to happen, I really need you to do some work. And, here's some places where you could go do that work.
Thank you.
Michelle Henson. Hey, what's up, Michelle? Michelle Henson says everyone needs to learn history. Also, trying to help white folks learn isn't our job.
That's what she just said.
Yes, she said it. Why is the load? What she said, why do we always have to carry the load? We have so much of our own healing and learning. We can't teach allies what we don't even know.
Yes, I asked that question for someone else. Yes, and I knew you were going to answer it that way. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
So do you get pushback from your family for what you do? I'm sure you're not fun at the Thanksgiving table.
Okay, so true confession. I haven't confronted my wider family. That's something I'm not happy to admit. My immediate family, my sisters and their families, my sisters and I were raised by the same set of Quaker parents. And so I'm very grateful that I have sisters who get it too, and I don't have to argue with them. My wider family, I've got some Trump supporters among my cousins, and it's not something I talk about with them. So I'm sorry to definitely fall down on that one. I actually just been recently, because we now have a monthly cousin Zoom, and we never talk about anything other than, kind of the weather and how are the grandkids. And I've been trying to think about, well, what would I say? And why would I say it? It would definitely make a big mess. So I want to be clear going in. Why am I making this big mess? I mean, I know why, because they need to know better. They need to do better. But yeah, I'm sorry.
See, Robin, you're like the porn star that the family don't know she's in porn until one day.
I wonder where he was going with that. I was like, does he know about some pictures that got released that we don't?
At the end of the class, Robin, you hand out diplomas. Do people walk up and go, hey, I'm not racist anymore. Look at
that. I hope they don't walk out thinking that. I hope that they walk away understanding that, holy shit, there's a way more to this than I ever realized, and I have got to keep going. I actually just published our most recent announcement about workshops under the banner, what did I call it? Building capacity for the long haul. And I, wrote at the beginning of it about how, because I'm aware that we had a lot of people join our workshops last May and June, because that's when the country was on fire. And I'm wondering how many of those people are still on fire. And I need them to know that they can't let that fire go out.
Can I ask you a serious question? Wow. Like last week, I mean, we saw what happened on the National Mall with the white supremacist groups and stuff like that. And I've been depressed about it. I'm depressed, just seeing that. First of all, I'm from D.C. The National Mall is a beautiful place. I've made a living there for years, and I'm depressed. And you being a white person that's not racist, but you're still not black. So are you depressed when you see like what you saw? You saw the same thing I saw. Did that depress you? Like I have a headache from that just won't go away. I'm depressed.
Me too.
Do non-racist white people get depressed when they see racism?
Well, yeah. I even cry about it, and that's problematic because we all know about white women's tears and how that's not cool. But in the privacy of my own home, I know that why I became anti-racist in the first place is that I am a very empathetic person, and I can't stand it. I can't stand it. I just can't stand it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that speaks to the fact that, in my opinion, I think I don't know, some people are born with a caring nature or a concern for other people. I can't explain that little thing I'm looking for, but some people have that in them, and if you have it in you, then of course when I see a kid get slapped upside the head, or if I see a black person being treated wrong, if I see a white person being treated wrong, I'm going to have the same response because it's my human nature that I have in me. Some people don't have it, and that's the people you see out in the Capitol thinking they're going to take hostages and kill everybody. Those people don't have it, so they could watch a hanging and a shooting and be like this and eat crumpets with it because they don't. There's no emotional response for them. But people who have it, it's going to be you're going to feel something. How could you not?
Yeah, I've read some research on the DNA involved here that is really discouraging, but I'm not a scientist, so I'm sure there's more to it than I understand, but I've read a little bit about how the DNA of groups who have been racially oppressed, that they carry that trauma. The trauma gets carried in the DNA. And similarly, in the DNA of white people, they what I'm going to call the trauma of losing your empathy, that's something that can be carried in the DNA. So, that feels like really not good news. But at the same time, I've also seen research about teaching children empathy. So I think you may be right, Tanya, that just like other qualities, maybe some people are more inclined to be altruistic and empathetic, but you also can teach children.
Absolutely.
Pamela Jones, another super fan, she said, I think one of the fronts of struggle against racism is white people confronting racists in their own families, Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I go back to again, like how white people are afraid of black people, the fear. I mean, I see it. And that more than anything pisses me off. Like I'm like doing a business deal. I had a white dude come to my house to talk about refinancing my house. And while we at the table talking, my kids were playing in the back, and he heard the noise, and he looked around with such fear in his eyes. Like, dude, really? You know what I mean? You're in my house, and you're still, you know what I mean? That kind of stuff. I just get the fuck out. Just get out.
Right.
You know what I mean? Of course, he's not going to understand. He's probably going to tell his wife, and I was in this black guy's house, and you just kicked me out for no reason. No, you know what I mean? As subtle as it was, you know what I mean? It was still being racist, as subtle as it was.
It's offensive.
Right. So if white people don't pick up, do they not pick up on that stuff? I mean, do they not? Is that something that he would not realize as a racist act?
Yeah, probably not, because again, it's part of that brainwashing that we've received, and that resistance to looking at it, because we might lose our privileges if we start questioning and interrogating.
Yeah, that's very big.
If we go through the history, the U.S. history books, and correct all the things where basically they lied about from the start, from the beginning, where they talk about the Native Americans at Thanksgiving, even though there was a big massacre and slaughter before they sat down to eat their nice meal, where Columbus came and almost committed genocide against the Arawak Indians, or just everything throughout there was just a lie, was put up to say, hey, if you're white, you did great in this country. And there's just so much of that. I mean, how do you peel back all of those layers?
And Robin, how do you think you're doing? How do you think your classes are doing?
I'm sorry, how do I think our staff is doing?
The class, like at the end of the class, you think people you're changing lives, you're changing people's way of thinking? Do you think you're making some effort, you're making some leeway?
I am confident that we are making changes. We see people, for one thing, come back for more. So that tells me that, we did a good job, that they're open to learning more about this and they want to continue learning. And we also hear about one of our colleagues, somebody who took just our Fundamentals 1 workshop. She went out and founded an organization in my county to fight racism. And I've heard other stories like that from people who have gone out and they wrote books, or they got in action. People are following through after they do our workshops.
Yeah.
Not everybody. I don't want to mislead you. I'm sure there are some who go away and say, okay, check.
Yeah. Do people suggest, like, I have a family member that should take your class, or?
Oh, sure. We have a lot of people who come to us saying, my teacher recommended this, my colleague. Yes. And we have people who sign up with their families. That's always really great to see.
And people leave the class learning stuff, like they're real. Oh my God, I had no idea I had these feelings. I had this way of thinking.
Yes. There's no question that it's very eye-opening for a lot of people.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, the class for black and white, it's not just for white people, because I'm thinking about taking the class because I like to learn, and I'm sure I have thoughts that I'm sure I could learn stuff about myself also.
Just go to the back of the class and dress like a Black Panther, Carl.
I learned a lot in the class, actually. I actually learned a lot, and it helps. Well, for me, it helped as African American because I was able to see other people's also vulnerabilities and years of their reverse. Well, I call it trauma. It's still trauma too. If your family raises you to teaches you that Black people are bad, that's a trauma in itself, because now you carry that through your whole life, and now people look at you like, I know you don't think I'm bad. So I got to see firsthand, like, oh, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, so wait, maybe instead of being like, how dare you, maybe I'll be like, take some more classes, take some more classes, put it on repetitive mode, because you can't, just like it's traumatizing for us. I know there's people who it's embedded in their everything, their parents, their grandparents, their great grandparents, and they're like, oh, white pride. And so with that being said, it's no excuse. It's never an excuse. But what am I gonna, they're not gonna wake up and be like, yeah, every Black person is cool when everything has taught them opposite. So at least for a moment, I have to step back and maybe not say nothing and maybe just gear them toward whatever, or ignore them or something. But I can't take every last person I know that's racist as it's bad, it's horrible, and I do not co-sign in any way, but I have to look at them and see, where did this person come from? What is their history? And are they willing to change? If they're not willing to change, I take them out of my box. You can't even be in my space if you have a racist bone in your body. I don't even want you in my cipher at all, because that's how I deal with racism. Like, okay, bye, go over to space and stay there. Because to me, it doesn't make sense. I can't change you if you don't have that thing I was telling you about, that little piece of caring. If you don't have that, I can't change you, and I don't want to. I don't care as long as you don't hurt me or my people, or any people. Then I'm okay with, you can be however you want to be.
I think the majority of white people don't understand the pain though, because they don't feel our pain. You know, they don't understand the trauma. You know, like for example, at the beginning of our show, Carl played the cartoon. It was a cartoon of the cops that had the black guy pulled over, and I was getting sweaty and antsy watching a freaking cartoon.
Yeah,
and it upset me.
Yeah,
you know,
Cortisone.
a cartoon.
Yeah.
Had me upset because I thought, they about to shoot this guy. The cartoon,
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sitting here. I never seen a cartoon before. I didn't know if he's gonna get shot or not.
Me too.
So I'm going, I don't want to see a black guy get shot again. You know, by a cop. You know, so we've seen that a lot.
Yes.
Over, you know, the
And
last
this
few
week
years.
it happened again. So yeah, we've seen it a
So,
lot.
yeah, that cartoon had me freaked out. But I'm saying they don't understand. White people can never understand our trauma. Even if you're not racist, you still don't understand the trauma that we have inside our soul. You know, is what I'm trying to get to. Yeah.
I gotta agree with you. Again, even though being an empathetic person, as I said, I don't live in the kind of circumstances that many people of color do. I don't have that everyday reality of being surrounded by that. And so it isn't very easy for me to really get what your experience is. But going back to what Tanya was saying, so that's why for me as a white person, one of the things I think I can do in reaching out to other white people is to help them notice where they have these internalized patterns that are so ugly, so damaging. You know, for me to go around feeling that I'm better than Black people, that is, you know, like my humanity has been damaged right there. And so that is an experience that I can speak to and talk about and encourage a white person, you know, is that who you want to be? Do you want to be that white person that, you know, grabs your purse when the Black man comes down the street toward? No, you don't want to be that person. So you need to do some work.
So what you should do at your class is put up a giant poster of Donald Trump and go, you want to do that?
I mean, it's funny how the little things that traumatize. Well, I don't traumatize. Yeah, it is kind of trauma. Like I was at Walmart with my son, and we were walking out. We didn't buy anything. We just went in. We didn't see what we wanted, and we were leaving. And my son had his cell phone in his hand, and the guy at the front was staring at it, just staring at his hand, looking at his hand. You know? And that pissed me off. Like, why are you? And I mean, like he was getting ready to trying to see if it was a phone that he didn't come in with. And I stopped my son. I go, stop. I go, do you have a problem with him? And he, of course, now he can play it off because only I saw what he was doing. You know, so now he's playing it off like, what do you mean? You're looking at his hand. We didn't steal the phone. I didn't say you stole the phone, but I saw you looking at it. Now, why am I going to waste my time getting in an argument with this guy? Because what he did, only I saw. But it still pissed me off that I can't come in and walk in and out of the store, you know what I mean? And not you look at me like I'm a criminal. And I tell these guys about walking into a store in the wintertime and I keep my hands out of my jacket, even though my hands are freezing.
Yeah.
Because I don't want the cameras to think that I stole something and have it in my jacket and be embarrassed. So I keep
do it as a woman.
Huh? I
do the same thing as a woman.
Yeah. I that's the things you have to do when you're Black. You know, I'm talking about the cops, but every Black person on this show, when you drive by a cop, what do we all do? You keep looking in the rearview mirror, and you look. You drive, you keep looking. Even you get home and you're still looking to see if they're coming up the driveway. You know, you start getting your license ready. You're getting this ready. You're making sure everything is all ready. You know what I mean? You're
It's terrible.
You know.
Yeah,
so
it's bad because you know how many times I've had to throw the drugs out the window needlessly. Damn, I did it again.
No, I keep my lawyer.
You have to throw them away. Damn, they come after me. No.
It's constant, and I don't like telling these stories because I know white people seem to think, "Oh, you guys are just whining," but I tell them because you get an idea of what it's like to be Black. I worked downtown Boston, and there was a little coffee shop. You go in and And if you want a newspaper, I used to see the white guys go in and just put $1 down and take up a newspaper and leave. They just put $1 down, take a newspaper, and they leave. I said, one day I said, yeah, I want to read a newspaper today. So I put $1 down, and I'm getting ready to leave, but I know in my head, I'm going, Carl is coming. And before I took 2 steps, the guy goes, hey, what do you got there?
Yep.
And now the place is filled up with people, so now I look like a criminal. What do you got there? I got a newspaper. What's in it? He goes, what's in it? What do you mean, what's in it? Words?
I don't know. I haven't read it yet.
Yeah.
So, so I left it. I should have put the newspaper back, you know what I mean? But I opened it up because all these white people are looking at me like, oh, he was, something's going on, and that just screwed up my whole day. Not in my whole day. It went into the next day and the next day. I wanted to go back and cuss the guy out. I wanted to go back at 2:00 in the morning and just hurl a brick through the window. You know what I mean? All kinds of shit went through my head just because that guy, he just ruined my day. Just by those simple words, what do you got there? So that's just my rant.
But I feel there's 2 things I want to say. My head is splitting a little bit. I want to go in 2 different directions. One is that I just want to make sure that y'all know about Eddie Murphy's amazing Saturday Night Live.
I saw that. Oh
my God, I watched that over and over. It just makes me laugh so hard. He goes undercover as a white man.
I saw it. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So you gotta see that. But also, I'm thinking about how life-changing it was for me. Two times in my life, we had a black man who was a member of our household. One was a friend who was living with us. One was my daughter's boyfriend who was living with us. And both times, like, to feel, oh my God, it was terrifying. I remember my daughter's boyfriend told me one time when we had been away on vacation and he stayed here, and when we got home, he told us that he had run across town when he found out that his girlfriend was back home. He had run across town through the backyards, jumping fences. I almost had a heart attack.
Wow.
And that was so instructive to me. To just see what it's like, just for a little bit, to see what it's like to, I don't know, losing my words. But, I don't know how it's possible to give white people an experience like that. I guess it probably isn't. But I can start by talking with my family at the Thanksgiving table, couldn't I?
Yeah. No, don't ruin the meal. You talk to them before Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So one of the things that will help with change is admittance of when you're a Karen or you're that person, admittance. And then secondly is, okay, what are you going to do about it? So taking classes like yours, I think will be very beneficial. I don't know why you're not in corporate America. That's where you need to be. And you need to be in media, teaching those, the news, not the reporter, but the executives, these concepts and things, because a lot of this stuff is fulfilled through media, through your jobs, through your company, big place. They filter these, they have a way that if they wanted to, they could stop this thinking pattern instantly, especially through television. For instance, today, I saw on the news, after all this stuff happened in the Capitol, what do you think I saw on the news? I think it was this morning or last night. A black guy, looks like he might be African, posed a terror threat of something like Middle Eastern type that here though, right? Black guy, very, very dark black man, and they have him in custody, and they put that across the news today. But this is just he's saying he's going to do something. He didn't do anything. So I said, you mean to tell me we can't even have the people of the Capitol labeled terrorists? First of all, they're not being charged with terror threats. Second of all, but this black guy who their intelligence thinks that he's gonna do a plot is now put into the media. So what do you think we all think? Oh, black terrorists. We forgot all about the Capitol for 5 seconds. All about it. So that's why I think your school needs to be at corporate media places and corporations, because that's where the lie keeps trickling down, and then people like Joe keep feeding it out to the media and to the basic people, and then people who are not educated or not well traveled will say, "Oh, yeah, you're right. Oh my God, they're gonna hurt me. I got to do something," and that's not the truth. So I hope you get in corporate places. That's my dream.
Yeah. Robin, Michelle Henson was asking, what books do you read during when you do your program? Is there any specific books?
So many books. So right now I have on my shelf White Kids by Margaret Hagerman. That's a book exploring what we were talking about earlier with how white children are being trained to grow up and perpetuate racism as opposed to put an end to it. I'm sorry, when you ask me a question like that, my mind goes blank. I want to mention here that I, aside from my work at CSWAC, I also, on my own, with a colleague, I put together a course recently called The Arc of White Womanhood, ARC, A-R-C, looking at how white women in our country have been complicit with this all along, but we kind of get a free pass because we're also an oppressed group, and so we kind of, get away with it. But actually, what I've been learning from a number of books about white women is that we've been really in it from the beginning and profiting major. So there's one called Brown Scars, White Tears. Yeah, Brown Scars, White Tears by Ruby Hamad. There's also a brand new book that I actually haven't read yet, but I'm going to order it on white feminism, it's called, that looks at that issue. Our co-founder, Jeff Hitchcock, who I mentioned earlier, he published a book called Lifting the White Veil. And that looks at, well, what is white culture? A lot of people think that there is no such thing. And, white people got no culture. But actually, white culture is what's dominating our society, and it's pretty important that we know as much as we can about it. And I mentioned earlier, I think already, the book by Robin DiAngelo, White Fragility. That's an excellent, very accessible book.
Yeah. We anybody else have any questions? No. All right, I'm gonna read a few. Robin, you're pretty popular. People love you.
Well, good. Sign up for my classes. Show me how you love me. Let's work together.
Michelle Henson, she just says, Robin, just put the information out there, but don't overstress about folks. It's their responsibility to deal with themselves. Looking forward to checking out your site. So
it's true.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
True.
All right, so we're gonna wrap it up. We've blown through an hour and a half.
Yes.
Robin, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. I was really excited. As you can tell, when I first started the show, when I was doing the introduction, I was speaking so fast. Gina Fiore said, Carl, take a breath. I was talking kind of fast because I was really excited. Because it's really refreshing for me, and I'll admit this, to talk to somebody white who's not in denial. It just pisses me off when I'm talking to some of my white friends and they act like they don't know what I'm talking about. But then there's some who I'm sure they don't mind if I mention their names, like Wendy Liebman, a white friend of mine, lives out in LA, and her and I talk about race all the time, and she emphasizes, and I tell her my side, she tells me her side, and we talk back and forth. Is Eileen Kelly, Kevin Flynn. These are white people I can have conversations, but then there's other white people, like I tell them the stories like I told you. Oh, come on, it's always about black with you, Carl. I'm like, so am I making this stuff up? Am I delusional? Did I not see that guy looking at my son's cell phone? You know what I mean? When he's walking out, did I not see that? Go ahead, sorry.
Well, no, I know you're wrapping it up, but I just got to say that I still remember vividly a black friend I had almost 20 years ago, who he and I went in a store looking at eyeglasses and stuff. And when he came out, he said, they were following me and looking for me to be a shoplifter. And I tried to explain to him why they were not following him. And, I tried to talk him out of his experience. And so that's not that long ago, but I learned, right? So, I don't know if your friend is going to be able to learn or not, but they could. I want you to not,
Yeah, because I realized that when I go, because I went out with a white friend of mine, he went to buy tires for his car. We're in a tire store, a tire shop. So while he's talking about the tires, I can see the guy that's writing up his order to get the tires. He's doing this. He's on the looking, like his eyes are on me, but he's writing.
Right.
You know, and I can see this, and I'm like, what's this guy think? I'm gonna roll one of these big ass tires. You know?
Yeah, you should not put them 2 tires in your back pocket.
How am I gonna steal 2 tires? Like, Jesus freaking Christ! Seriously? I mean, the guy's eyes are on me while he's writing. You know, it's like,
don't wear the long coat when you go to the tire place.
So, Pamela Jones said, that it's trauma. She said, I left with baggage when I talked about going into the store, buying a newspaper, and the guy stopping me because he thought I was stealing a newspaper. She said, that's baggage. That's baggage for Black people. And it's every day. It never lets up. It's every day. I feel when I get up to leave my house, I physically feel I have to go out and deal with white society.
Yes.
I have to get ready to go out and deal with white society. I have to make sure, whether it's a look, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like,
yes, I do know what you mean.
Here I put into people by walking into a jewelry store, a Black man walking into a jewelry store. I guarantee some heart rates shoot up. just by walking into a jewelry store.
Even when we go in, are you kidding?
Yeah, right. Anybody black walks in, and this is, I mean, every single day, every day. It never ends. It never stops. You know, and then to have somebody say all lives, that is the one statement all lives matter. Really? Where were you? Have you not been watching, or do you not know the history of America?
That one Black man a week is getting killed. You didn't
Yeah.
notice that? In the back, shot in the back.
Yeah, and you're gonna say all lives matter. Well, Robin, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Yeah,
Tanya, you knocked it out the park once again. This is the second one in a row. You brought us a great guest, and we really appreciate it. I'm going to start with Tanya, and I'm going to Desi and Kevin and Preach. And if you guys have any parting words or anything you want to say before we wrap up, Tanya, you want to go ahead?
Well, I just want to say again, thank you so much, my friend, for coming. I appreciate you so much. And I wish there was more people in the world like you. But I'm determined to keep faith because of the kind of school that you work for and other people I know who are also taking action in their own little way. And I'll do my, my due diligence of just sitting back and letting them take care of their problem because it's not really my problem anymore. It's really just other people have to reflect on their own stuff and get it out of the way because it's killing all of us, literally.
All right, Desi.
Robin, I'd just like to say thank you. I appreciate you coming on. I feel more educated talking with you. I want to thank the audience for tuning in and giving us your time. We hope that you're growing and learning from as well as we are from what we're seeing and hearing. And I just want to say thank you, everyone. Be careful out there next week. It's supposed to be a little bit sketchy, so be on your P's and Q's.
All right, Kevin.
Yeah, I want to thank Robin for coming on the show. You're awesome. You got your work cut out for you. I think we celebrate Martin Luther King's birthday this month, and armed U.S. guards walking through the streets of Washington, D.C. right now to keep the peace from racists. So let that sink in. It's crazy. But thank you for coming on the show. Appreciate you.
Preach.
I just want to thank Robin, like everybody else. I do appreciate what you're putting out there. I know a good read also is a book by Howard Zinn, A People's History of the United States. I don't know if you've seen that. Yes, you obviously. But for those who are out there that have not read that, that's a good way to look at the history of the U.S. Told by someone who's not, in his story, it's the white, supremacist that wrote most of the history that we learned growing up. But this actually looked at it from a real point of view, a non-discriminating point of view.
All right. And Robin, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. And I would say this, when I get into my moods where I'm screaming about white people, I think about people like you, and that brings me back down. Because as you know, when you go through all these different things you go through when you're Black and you start, ranting and raving against white people, it's good to have people like you in mind. And thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Robin.
All right.
Thanks, Ray.
We can't afford applause button, so we have to get real
Yeah. And let me thank all our fans that's been watching the show from day one. Gina Fiore, super fan. Emma Bird, Donna Haygood, Carrie. Yes. What? Carrie D'Agostino. Shut up. I'm sure I'm screwing up her name. Tatiana Cooper. That's your daughter, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
Gina
Gina Fiore said that she responded to something Gina said. Gina said she's intimidated when she sees anyone wearing a hoodie and having their hands in their pocket. She gets scared. And Tatiana responded, hoodies are comfortable and it's cold outside, so I keep my hands in my pocket. I guess.
Right. You would say.
That way you don't drop your gun.
Pamela Jones, thank you so much. Kathleen Marie Smith, thank you so much. Thank you guys for commenting. Please come back. Please like and share, and please invite friends and family to watch our show. Who else is on here? Josh Gold. Thank you. Jeannie Springer.
That's my cousin-in-law.
That's you? You know that person?
That's my cousin-in-law.
Oh, Josh Gold?
Yeah.
What up, Josh? Josh said some stuff, but we never got a chance to. The only way to make change is to start young with education, which is true. You know, so I'm sure Robin has mentioned this. When white people walk by and a black man walks by and then grab the kid's hand really tight, that tells the kid something. You know, you might say, I'm not teaching my kid racism, but you just taught him something, him or her something.
Carl, I'm sorry. Are you able to see if my son Lincoln is here? Lincoln Alpern?
No, where is he? Where is he?
Let me see. I'll look.
He thought he was going to try and get in.
I know. I saw.
Just curious.
What's his name?
Lincoln.
Lincoln Alpern. That's a white anti-racist I birthed and raised.
I can vouch for him. I'm Kevin.
Michelle Henson, thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, one more thing. And white women, when you get on the elevator with a black guy, remember Ted Bundy.
And when you grab your bag, make sure that it's a Chanel.
Yeah. Travis Wortham, our Dallas friend. Travis, we're going to have you back on the show. Absolutely, Travis. We're going to have you back on. Yeah, so that's all I can. If I missed your name, I'm really sorry. But once again, thank you so much, Robin, for coming on the show. This excellent show, very informative. And thanks, everyone, for watching. Please join us again next Saturday. We're going to have a great topic.
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
Yay.
5